In this video, we're going to begin to establish the topography for the Revit project. We've basically got the four structures blocked in. We'll be adding detail here and there, but for the most part, what we see here is basically the volumetric extent of the project. We started off by just drawing the structures irrespective of any kind of topography. But typically you would, of course, begin with what the site conditions are, what the slopes are, and begin placing your structure in response to those contours. But we're working a little bit backwards. So I'm going to go to section number 1 and talk a little bit about these foundations. So part of this exercise was just to explore different foundation conditions and types. Those are going to be dependent on not only the topography, but also the sort of soil makeup below the structure. So perhaps you have to go a little bit deeper if you have really poor quality soil. Perhaps you're in a climate that is very cold, and so you need to make sure that those foundations go below the frost line. We'll be starting our topography focusing on this structure right here. This is a slab on grade with thickened edges here. And basically you would use this type of slab if the climate was relatively warm. So the soil will, or the top of grade will come fairly high. We want it to come, about 6 inches below the top of the level 1 slab here, 6 to 8 or 9 inches. Basically, you don't want it to be too high because then you have some vulnerability with the building assembly if water is able to kind of get back up into the structure. So as I mentioned, we will begin our topography focused on this particular structure. I'm going to go to the site plan and I'll go to massing and site and I'll generate a topographic surface. So I have here an elevation of -6 inches. And you could perhaps make that a little bit bigger. If we go down to 8 inches, that gives us a little bit more dimension below the slab. So that's this one right here. And what I'll do is with that elevation set at -0 feet, 8 inches, I'll place 4 points just outside of the structure. So I'll click here, here, somewhere down here, and right here. Now, these don't have to be terribly precise. Again, these are ground conditions, which are going to have, large variables. And I'll go ahead and click on the check mark. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my section 1 and take a look at what we have. Okay, so here we have the top of grade. It's coming in at -8 inches below the top of level 1. All right, now for the rest of the structures, again, we're kind of approaching this without really having concrete information about what the soil conditions and climate are. We're trying to explore different foundation types. But one thing is for sure that I need to bring my grade below the top of any of these concrete foundations. In this case, the piers. In this case, I need it to come below the top of this crawl space foundation. And in the case over here, I need it to come below this full foundation wall with basement. So it's going to take a little bit of going back and forth with some of these numbers to make sure that my slopes are drawn correctly. Okay, so let's go back to the site plan. And from here, I'm going to click on the topo surface that I already made. And I'm going to click on Edit Surface. Okay, now I will begin by placing some additional points. Again, don't feel like you have to get too precise about this. It's a little bit of a trial and error process. If I click on place point, and I, again, look at my elevation here, let's just say, just to get things started off, I put -4 feet. And I go about, and I now place 4 points in a larger rectangle surrounding all of the structures, like so. Okay, and then I hit the check mark. Okay, so we don't see much yet, in part because the topographic contours have not been turned on to an increment that makes them visible. So while I'm still in the massing and site ribbon, I'm going to click on the arrow here and take a look at the settings. Okay, let's see here. So it says here intervals of 10 feet. So in other words, I'm only going to see a contour every 10 feet. And if I'm going from -8 inches to 4 feet, there should be nothing in between there. So I'm going to drop it down to another number. I'm going to change it to 6 inches. And that will allow me to see many more contours. So let's go ahead and apply this and say, okay. All right, so now we see these lines appear. These are my contour lines, and each one of them should indicate a 6-inch change in level. So from here to here, 6 inches, from here to here, 1 foot, and these are dropping. Let's take a look at how that is reflected in the section. Okay, so now you can see we're starting to see a grade appear. So I've got the grade that I started off with that first structure. For the second one over here on the right, what I can see is that the grade is still too high. It's touching these wood frame members, the heavy timber. If I go over here towards the left, I still have a problem. It's at the same height, or it's above the bottom of the rim joist and the sill plate. So that's not going to work. I'm going to need to drop it lower. As it continues its downward path, it's starting to get low enough. In fact, what we have here would technically be fine, but I do need to make some revisions to this one right here and to the one with the piers. So I'll go back to the site plan and I will begin to add more increments. Now, I could, of course, check the dimension of the top of the pier for this one and use that as a basis. Maybe that would be a good idea. So I'll go to section 1. I'll change my graphic display to wireframe, and as you can see, I need to come down quite a distance here. I'm going to take a measurement here from the top of my pier to level 1. It's got to be down to at least 4 feet 6 inches at this point. Okay, so why don't we work on that? Go to site, edit the surface, and this is where I need to generate that -4 feet. So this is where, this will take a little bit of playing around with to get this to look right. -4 feet. So this is already -4 feet. I think before I start with that, what I'm going to do is change these values here. So let's see here. Let's start this again. I added a point by mistake. Edit surface. If I click on one of these contours, it will tell me what that individual contour is. So let's say I change this now to something much lower, to -8. And so you can see that the contours have shifted a little bit. And what if I change this one to, let's say, -9? So they don't have to be symmetrical about the corners. Okay, so that's now -9. And somewhere in here, I want to bring in a contour that's a lot lower. Let's see what happens when I place a point and I put -4 feet 6 inches. And I put that point, let's say, about right here. And then I do another one somewhere over here. Okay, so what I have here is a kind of flat part at the top, and then it's sloping down to these corners. Let's take a look at the section and see how that looks. Okay, so now I am below the top up grade at all of the piers. So that should work. Okay, now to get the sort of best scenario with any structure, you want a slight grade away from the structure. So, it may be better to pull that point in a little closer so that I'm getting, not this flat spot right here. So you can go back to the site plan and click on the contour and move it. So if I move it a little closer here, I can do that for all of them. I'll get a little bit more of an articulated grade right near the structure. Let's move that one in a little bit. And this one here. And then I will go and take a look and see what that change, what effect it had on my section. All right, so it's now a little bit flatter. And you could, bring in more contours to generate more pitch. You could bring that -6 all the way to the edge of the slab. Why don't we try that? Let's see how that looks. I'll just move in one of the corners. And put the check mark. Go back to section number 1. Okay, so it must be like halfway between. So we'll try bringing both of them in to that corner, and then just let the grade out. Okay, edit surface. Bring this and move my zoom toolbar out of the way here and pull that in like that. All right, now let's have a look. Check mark. We go to section. All right, I'm not sure why am I getting still some flat area right there. We'll kind of play around with that a little bit more, but I'm going to go to section 1 and take a look at the other side. Getting an okay pitch right there, but I do need to bring this one down. So let's work on that a little bit. So I'll take a measurement here. This one, the top of the foundation is 1'4" and a quarter. So maybe if I could put a 2 foot -2 feet here, that will probably work for that part of the site. Place a point, -2 feet. And I'll go ahead and place a point here. And this time I'm just putting it right up against the structure. And a check mark. Okay, and you can see that it brought it down below the top of the foundation. And as I mentioned before, I think we're okay in these other areas, but actually they will excavate here. So we're going to make a building pad to clear out this area underneath. But before that, this is sufficiently below the top of the foundation wall. However, we do want to have a little bit of pitch to the sides of it. So if I go back to my site plan here, right now we have water flowing down against this wall. It would be better to have a slight high point right here and let it pitch downward to these corners. So I'm going to make another change to the topography. Okay, so I lost this right here. Okay, so here's what we'll do. We'll drop this a little bit more to minus 2 feet 6 inches, and same thing with this one, minus 2 feet 6 inches. And instead, we will put, somewhere in the middle here, place a point. This one will be minus 2. So it'll be slightly higher in the middle. And what that will do is allow it to slope a little bit away towards the corners here. Okay, and I can follow suit with this one right here. Maybe we'll, as we added 3 points here, we'll add 3 on this structure so that we can generate a slope slightly to the corners, but well below the top of the foundation. So I'll just go to my section 1 again, and this time I'm going to do a measurement right here. Of course, it's the same, but I'm going to generate a little bit more. Let's see what it's measuring to right there at the corner. 3 feet. So if I was to bring it to minus 3 feet at the corners and or minus 3 feet 6 inches at the corners and minus 3 in the middle, the same way that I did the other one, we'll get some slope away from the building towards the corners. So place a point. This one is going to be minus 3, which I'm going to put, I think, I can just move that one. Did I place that point? It didn't. Try this again. 3 feet. That is the overhang. I'm going to see what happens when I put that 3 feet here. Okay. And then when I put minus 3 feet 6 inches, and I put those at the grid intersections, the same thing. I'm kind of getting a pitch slightly towards the edges. And we'll go and check out the section one more time. Okay. So that should be okay for the purposes of our topography. And next we'll work on creating hollow spaces where we have this crawl space and where we have the full basement.